Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more. As I neared the grounds I was set to maintain, the age and elegance of the place caught my eye. Flower beds lined the walkways, meticulously tended with cedar chips. The campus was beautifully maintained, showcasing a variety of annual and perennial flowers against the red brick walls. I couldn't help but wonder how many people were responsible for its upkeep. It seemed unlikely that one person could manage all this. The buildings were a blend of marble, stone, and brick, complemented by perfectly manicured lawns. I parked in a visitor slot and made my way to the administration building, where I had an appointment with Mrs. Penn, the personnel administrator. I was greeted by her attractive secretary and ushered into an office adorned with books and a large oval dark oak desk. Mrs. Penn sat in a plush chair and stood to greet me. We shook hands before she invited me to take a seat. "Mr. Walker, I understand you're seeking employment. What brings you to Chatham Hall?" she asked. "Your ad for a groundskeeper, Do you have experience in that area?" she inquired. "Just at home, Mrs. Penn, but I'm familiar with most of the tools." "That's good to hear, but are you knowledgeable about tractors, power takeoffs, fertilization, and pest control? Would you be able to lift heavy machinery and occasionally drive a forklift?" I'm not sure, I'm a bit on the slender side." "Mr. Walker, may I call you Erin?" "Sure." "Well, Erin, your build may not be quite suited for that role. But don't look so disappointed, we have another position that hasn't been advertised, and based on your academic record, I think you might be a good fit." "Why aren't you heading to college?" "My family can't afford it, and my grades aren't high enough for a scholarship, so I thought I'd work for a couple of years to save up," I replied. "I understand. This other job could be just right for you. How would you feel about being a teacher's assistant?" "I'm not sure. What would that entail, and what's the pay?" "Your responsibilities would include assisting the instructor, distributing and collecting tests, grading when necessary, monitoring student behavior, and running errands. The pay is similar, but the work is lighter and better suited for you. Plus, you'll have the advantage of learning the material, which will help you when you eventually pursue college." "How does that sound?" "That sounds great, Mrs. Penn. When do I start?" "Right away if you'd like, but there are a couple of guidelines, think of them as suggestions. We would prefer you follow them for your safety, but the final choice is yours." "I'm not quite following." "Well, the male staff wear tiny earplugs to block out distractions. They don't filter out speech but do help with loud noises. Additionally, we recommend you eat in the teacher's lounge, but you can join the students if you make friends or feel more comfortable there. You may also take your meals off campus. Just remember, everything you do here has consequences, but the decisions are always yours to make." "Sounds good, Mrs. Penn. I'll try the earplugs and dine with the teachers for a while." "Did you know that room and board are included with our positions?" "No, I didn't. Since the hours can be long and the work demanding, we provide on-campus housing and prefer you stay here during the week. You can go home on weekends." "That works for me." "Great, Erin. That wraps up our interview. You're hired as a teacher's assistant. Take the rest of the day to gather your things and come back to settle in. Laura, the young lady you just met, will help you when you return. Oh, and the starting salary is $350 a week, which I believe you'll find sufficient." "Thank you, Mrs. Penn. I'll be back in an hour or two." To say I was overjoyed would be an understatement. During the short drive home, I found myself singing along to the easy listening songs on the radio, completely ignoring rock and roll. A teacher's assistant at a prep school, and I'd be learning while earning. This was amazing. I couldn't wait to share the news with Mom and Dad. Upon arriving home, I floated into the house. "My, you look happy. Did you get the job, honey?" Mom asked. "Even better, Mom. They hired me as a teacher's assistant instead of a groundskeeper, and I'll be learning while I work." They want me to stay on campus during the week, so I'll only be home on weekends. That's wonderful. Your dad will be thrilled. Room and board plus $350 a week, Mom. Isn't that fantastic? Very much so. And we won't have to spend as much on groceries either. Your dad will appreciate that too. When do you start? I'm just here to grab my things, then I'll head back. I'll be packing a bag and leaving soon. Make sure to take some nice clothes. You want to make a good impression. Once you receive a few paychecks, you might want to buy some new outfits. You don't have many dressy clothes, and they may dress a bit upscale, you know? Yes, I'll have to see how the others dress to figure out what I need. I got started on my packing, which didn't take long at all. I tossed my underwear and toiletries into the suitcase, while the rest of my clothes hung on the 2 hooks in the car, hooks that wouldn't see much action. I was sure I would need to buy some new clothes soon. Upon returning to the office, Laura Stern guided me to my dorm room on the 1st floor. It struck me as unusual, but I shrugged it off. After all, I was the same age as the students, and perhaps I would make some friends my own age while navigating daily interactions with the faculty. I settled in, hanging up my sparse wardrobe and filling only half of the chest of drawers with underwear and a few sweaters. The room was inviting, decorated in cheerful colors, with pretty curtains at the window and a flower-patterned quilt on the 4-poster full-sized bed. A rocker recliner, a small TV, and a desk that resembled my mom's vanity completed the furnishings. I had my own bathroom, and I noticed small speakers in the ceilings of both rooms. They were likely for announcements or fire drills, I thought. However, before I inserted the earplugs, I could hear soft, soothing music emanating from the speakers. It was the kind of gentle, easy-listening music I enjoyed, albeit barely audible in the school due to the ambient noise. In fact, I had left my radio on at home all night, listening to that same calming music, which helped me sleep. This was going to be fine. I could manage it here too. I wrapped up my settling in around 4 p.m. and went back to see Laura. She informed me of the dining schedule for faculty: dinner served between 4 and 6 p.m., breakfast at 7, and lunch from noon to 2. Erin, she said. Yes. You don't have your earplugs in. Oh, I was enjoying the music in my room so much that I forgot. Thanks. I quickly put them in and made my way to the faculty lounge for supper. Ah, Mr. Walker, our new assistant. Get yourself something to eat and sit with us so we can get to know each other, said a woman I hadn't met before. I grabbed a modest tray of food and returned to join her. There were only a couple of other men in the lounge. You seem to have the advantage here, I said. I'm sorry, I'm Gail Collins. You'll mostly assist me with English and economics, but you might get passed around a bit since we're a little short-handed. I hope that's okay. No problem. I'm looking forward to it. It'll give me a better feel for a collegiate atmosphere, and it sounds like fun. Well, it may be fun, but be prepared for a lot of hard work, she cautioned. I noticed most of the instructors were women, and they weren't wearing earplugs. I didn't hear the soothing music here either. We chatted as a few others joined us for dinner, and I got swept up in the conversation, which mostly revolved around topics of interest to the women. I realized I'd need to adjust to this dynamic. Listening to women talk could help me understand their interests and improve my communication with them. Laura had given me my schedule and a campus map, and my first class was set for 8:30 the next morning. I decided to head to the library to gather the textbooks for the courses I'd be assisting in and do a little studying before bed. Once back in my room, I removed the earplugs and began browsing through the books. Before I knew it, I had fallen asleep in the chair, only to wake up at midnight. I got up and crawled into bed wearing just my underwear. To my surprise, the sheets were made of some soft material, nylon, perhaps. They felt wonderful, but exhaustion quickly overtook me, and I fell asleep again. I woke at 7 a.m., took a shower, shaved my stubble, and dressed in slacks, a shirt, and a sports coat before heading to breakfast. This time, I remembered to put in my earplugs, still unsure of their necessity but following instructions. Mrs. Collins was there, and after we finished breakfast, we walked to class together. She seemed pleasant and easy to talk to, and I found myself liking her. I'd never worked for a woman before, but it didn't seem like it would be a bad experience. As the day progressed, I gained more insight into my duties and my gopher status, essentially a jack of all trades, which promised to make my time here more interesting and less mundane, knowing that teaching could sometimes be dull. I couldn't help but notice a few girls in my classes, very cute and smart, and they dressed impressively. They wore dresses and stylish heels, while the few boys also looked nice, albeit a bit, well, perhaps a little on the feminine side. Their clothing wasn't the rugged, masculine styles I expected for October, nor were they overtly feminine. There were no blue jeans in sight. The boys were well-groomed, sporting longer hairstyles, and 2 of them wore earrings. I even suspected that the boy named Adrian was wearing lip gloss or chapstick, and all of them had shiny, well-manicured nails. It struck me that grooming must be a priority here. Looking around the classroom, I realized I would need to catch up to keep pace with the guys who had been here for a month already. I mentally noted that if this was the standard set by Mrs. Collins, I would stand out if I didn't step up my game. My first day went smoothly, even though I felt a bit anxious about interacting with peers my own age. They seemed fine with my presence and recognized that I was just an employee. Initially, they called me Mr. Walker, as I had been introduced. I ran into Adrian in the hall, and we chatted for a few minutes. He was very nice and quite refined for a boy, which I appreciated. I told him to call me Erin instead of Mr. Walker and invited him to drop by my room anytime. He said he would. After dinner, I returned to my room, took out those earplugs, and studied for a bit. Then it occurred to me that I should go out and buy a complete manicure kit, so that's what I did. I couldn't figure out why I hadn't just settled for an emery board. For some reason, I also picked up hand lotion, clear polish, and polish dryer. Back in my room, I set to work on my hands, trying to make them resemble the others in class, essentially like the girls' hands, with pushed-back cuticles and rounded nails, albeit with just the clear polish. I had gotten a hardener and must have applied 4 coats by the time evening rolled around. My nails turned out shiny and nice, even if they were a bit short. I knew they would grow, and I noticed how easily the others picked up papers with their longer nails. That would be an asset in my role of shuffling papers. I looked forward to their growth. This time, I didn't fall asleep in the chair. I took my time enjoying the luxurious feel of my bedding as I settled in for the night, placing my earplugs on the nightstand to hear the alarm. I had reasoned that the plugs were just to help me concentrate on my work, which they did, but sleep wasn't work. My next day unfolded much like the first, and I continued to make observations about the students and the work. Jade Williams caught my eye. She dressed quite attractively, and the combination of her outfit and whatever she had on underneath made her quite alluring in my eyes. I decided I needed to find a way to get to know her as well. As expected, my days fell into a routine, and soon it was time to head home for my first weekend. Mom greeted me with a big hug, and I waited until Dad came home to share all the details about my job so I wouldn't have to repeat myself. They both noticed my manicure without any negative remarks, but I explained that all the students were well-groomed and I wanted to keep pace as an assistant. We enjoyed a relaxing weekend, although I did end up cutting the grass while Dad watched football, which I never cared for. I preferred tennis and ice skating, but neither was on that weekend. I left for campus Sunday night, gave myself another manicure, and, for some reason, stopped at the store to pick up some facial cleansing products. I trimmed and filed my toenails and applied clear polish, also spending some time brushing my hair. Since I wouldn't get paid until the 1st and 15th of the month, I had a week to wait for my first paycheck, which I knew would mostly go toward new clothes. One night that week, Adrian stopped by for a nice visit. He obviously came from a refined family, and I complimented him on his slacks and shirt. He blushed and thanked me. "Would you like to go shopping with me when I get paid, Adrian?" "Oh, sure. I love to shop. If you like my clothes, I'm sure we can find you some nice similar items too." And so, we made plans for Saturday. While on our way to the mall, I asked Adrian if he knew Jade Williams. "Oh, yes. She's very sweet," he replied. "Are you interested?" "I'm not dead," I joked back. "She's a second-year student, Erin, but you're nice-looking, even if you are a bit slight. Maybe she'd go out with you. I can introduce you, and then it's up to you what happens." "Great. I'll take that." We reached the mall and went inside. Shopping with Adrian was both expensive and educational. I noticed his clothing was soft, flowing, and made from high-quality fabrics, and of course, that's what he recommended for me too. After Adrian showed me around the fabrics and styles for a while, I found myself agreeing that I liked the soft, flowing materials too. I ended up buying several shirts and a couple of pairs of lightweight slacks before we moved on to underwear. However, what Adrian referred to as underwear was more akin to lingerie. At first, the idea of wearing soft nylon hip-high briefs without a placket and cap-sleeved satin t-shirts intimidated me. But then I recalled how much I loved the feeling of my bed and wanted more of that comfort, which led me to buy several sets of rather slinky nylon lingerie. The high-rise briefs did pose a challenge, as I realized I wouldn't be able to stand while relieving myself. It struck me that I hadn't seen any of the young men using the urinals. How odd. I hadn't observed a single guy standing to pee in the past 2 weeks, except for the staff. It was clear we were likely not in a men's clothing store. The shop was called Aiden's, without any gender designation, and I hadn't seen any men's suits or shoes there either. Next, we moved on to a self-serve shoe store where the aisles were simply labeled with sizes. I was used to regular shoe stores where attendants helped you. I spotted a nice pair of penny loafers and tried on my size, but they were too small. I continued down the aisle until I found a pair that fit. They were size 8, and surprisingly, they made my feet look smaller, almost petite. They felt quite lightweight, which I appreciated. Again, how strange. I also needed slippers and found a pair of scuffs in the same aisle. They were a bit fancy in silver but fit well and would be perfect for padding around the room. After making my purchases, we left the store. I had about $100 left, which forced us to wrap up our shopping, disappointing Adrian since he loved to shop so much. But I had to save a bit for gas and snacks, especially since this was just a 1-week paycheck. He didn't let that stop him. We continued browsing, and he went into a few shops looking for things for himself. He found a shirt he liked, though it turned out to be a blouse, soft and pretty, but not overly feminine. I complimented him on how nice it looked. I couldn't believe I was accepting this young man buying a lady's blouse for himself and actually complimenting him on it. I hadn't developed any particular biases in this area, and it hadn't even crossed my mind to check the button orientation on my new shirts. He truly looked sweet in it, and I noticed the lip gloss he wore had a very light tint. Adrian had a rather androgynous appearance, but it didn't seem to bother me like I thought it would. I accepted him as he was, earrings, lip gloss, and all. I could have sworn I saw little bumps under that blouse, but I dismissed the thought. Surely he wasn't developing breasts, yet I wasn't entirely sure and curiously, I didn't mind. On our way back to the dorm, Adrian was animated in conversation, much more expressive than I was used to from a guy. If I wanted him as a friend, I realized I'd have to accept that, so I did. I felt a bit concerned that hanging out with someone who was more effeminate might reflect poorly on me, but I wasn't effeminate, so what did it matter? Besides, he could help introduce me to my dream girl. Once we reached the dorm, I put my purchases away and changed into one of those nice sets of underwear. They felt incredible. I decided then and there that I would prefer nylon over cotton and vowed to get more soft and slinky clothing. A satin robe sounded nice too. As I admired my new lingerie, I noticed my hair needed some attention, so I washed and conditioned it until it shone, styling it for more volume than usual. The combination of my new underwear and the sheets was almost overwhelming. It felt wonderful. I was so glad I took this job. I drifted off to sleep listening to the soothing music, and just before waking, I had a strange dream. I was in the bath, shaving all the hair off my legs, arms, and underarms, reveling in the smoothness of my skin. It took a few more days for circumstances to align, but I finally got Adrian to introduce me to Jade. I was quite taken with her. She was friendly yet somewhat aloof, so I knew I would have to take things slow. It would take some time to get to know her before I could ask her out, and she might not even be interested in dating me, but I was prepared for that possibility. All I could do was focus on building a friendship first and see where it led. I wasn't looking to rush things. The first step in this direction was to abandon the faculty cafeteria for the student one, as I wouldn't have many chances to talk to her outside of class otherwise. The noise level was so loud that I had to take out my earplugs just to hear her. The menu was quite different, and all the drinks had a slightly unusual taste, but for Jade, I was willing to adapt. Mrs. Collins had warned me against eating in the student cafeteria and said the food wasn't as good, but sacrifices had to be made. In addition to my responsibilities and interactions with the faculty, I spent my free time with Adrian and Jade. Adrian would often come to my room, and I found myself slipping into a more animated way of relating to him, much like he did with me. If I had to label it, I would say he encouraged me to be more fluid and expressive. Although it might have come across as a bit campy, I began to feel comfortable with it. However, my meetings with Jade took place in the library, student lounge, or coffee shop, and we kept our relationship very platonic. I wasn't sure if I was making any real progress, but we began sharing details about our lives and became friendly. I learned she was from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and that her father owned a small department store, which explained her stylish clothing. My blue-collar background didn't seem nearly as interesting, so I downplayed it whenever I could. It suddenly dawned on me that I was spending a lot of time with a girl and a boy who sometimes seemed more girl than boy. Oh well. One night, I wore one of my new outfits to the coffee shop, and Jade complimented my taste in clothes. With a gesture I recognized as feminine, I explained that Adrian had helped me choose them. She replied, "Oh, Adrian has wonderful taste, Erin. You should really listen to his advice. He could be a designer. If you follow his lead, you'll be voted best dressed on campus in no time." "Really?" I asked. "Oh yes. Trust me. You'll love how you look. Just put yourself in his hands." "All right, if you say so, Jade. He does dress well. We're planning to do more shopping in a week, and I intend to get some nicer things. But he is rather effeminate, don't you think?" I remarked. She smiled sweetly, a twinkle in her eye, and slyly said, "Oh, I know, but I appreciate a boy who isn't afraid of that side of himself. A little bit of that might look attractive on you too, Erin. You certainly have the face for it." Wow. That was a revelation. Maybe I would give it a try. I'd never ventured into any form of femininity before, but I realized I had been paying more attention to my hair, nails, and underwear, traits traditionally associated with girls. What's more, I was enjoying these pursuits and the feelings they brought. For some reason, we stopped by the commissary, and I picked up a bottle of natural color clear polish that had a slightly pinkish tint. After walking Jade to her room, I returned to my own and gave myself another pedicure and manicure in the natural shade. After 3 coats, a hint of color emerged. Over the past 3 weeks of pushing back cuticles and filing, my nails looked as nice as any of the other students. What made me think of them as other girls? But they did look good, long, rounded, and shining like jewels. My hands were soft and pretty thanks to the hand lotion. I felt quite pleased with them. My parents noticed, of course, but didn't comment much, accepting it as part of my refined lifestyle and better clothing. I was a teacher's assistant, not a factory worker. Spending so much time with Adrian and Jade and in that noisy cafeteria, I had pretty much stopped using my earplugs. I never fully understood their purpose, and the faculty had said it was my choice. I filed them away in my nightstand and left them there. Looking back, that decision, along with my other activities, began to feel quite liberating. I was becoming more like my friends. As Adrian, Jade, and I grew closer, I became increasingly accepting of Adrian's femininity, which seemed to be on the rise. I started thinking of him as one of the girls and didn't care anymore. He certainly spoke and acted like one lately. I had no idea femininity could be contagious, but I was soon to learn that Jade's suggestion to embrace a bit of it had quietly taken root in me. I was definitely loosening up, as they say. To a casual observer, the three of us seated together in the coffee shop might have looked like three girls chatting and giggling, just as girls tend to do. Upon receiving my third paycheck after 5 weeks, all three of us headed to the mall. I hardly knew where to begin. Being around girls and feminine boys, including Adrian, had me feeling like I was in a post-hypnotic trance, and just being with them put me in a decidedly girlish mood. I couldn't get over myself. They suggested things, and I tried them on or went along with whatever they wanted. It was so much fun. I'd never had such a great time shopping. Most of our time was spent in distinctly women's specialty shops, where I quickly discovered that a women's size 10 slacks fit me far better than anything I could find in the men's section. They also got me into blouses and blazers that were suitable for work, where the feminine cut and button placement wouldn't be too obvious. At least that's what I convinced myself. The blazers accentuated my slender waist and rounded hips. Why were my hips getting fuller? Still, it all felt wonderful with my nylon underwear, and Adrian really did have great taste, as Jade said. But when did my bottom start to blossom? In my nice slacks, blouse, and blazer, I suddenly realized I was starting to develop a figure. I wasn't sure what had come over me. I was surprisingly receptive to all these feminine things. After all, Jade had mentioned she admired boys who embraced their femininity, and I admired her and still held out hope. So, I let them dress me, and I loved the result, even if it resembled Adrian's style more. I found myself acting frivolous and expressive all of a sudden. My goodness. I left that mall without a single masculine piece of clothing or shoes. They took me to a makeup counter where I sat still as they pierced my ears with small gold hoops, which I adored against my longer, fuller hair. The girl insisted on plucking my eyebrows, applying blush, and using a light frost lipstick that suited my coloring. And I bought it all. She kept referring to me as Miss, and I didn't have the heart to correct her. Looking at myself, I could hardly tell what I was anymore. At that moment, I must confess I felt very much like a miss. There I was in girls' slacks, a blouse, and a blazer, and now I was also wearing frilly panties and a camisole from the lingerie store, sheer knee-high hose, and loafers with 2.5 stacked heels. "Erin," Jade said, "you look positively darling. Please keep dressing this way. You have real potential, don't you think, Adrian?" "Oh yes, Jade. Erin, you're going to turn out smashing." Gee, guys, I blushed as I caught my reflection in the full-length mirror. I looked quite androgynous, leaning more toward girl, just like my friend Adrian. I looked sweet, too sweet. I just thought of myself as looking sweet, feeling completely girlish from head to toe, and it felt wonderful. I tingled all over at the thought. I was actually a bit turned on by my reflection, and I noticed my arousal alongside their slinky lingerie. What did Adrian mean by going to turn out? What was happening to me? Did I care? Would it affect my job? I hoped not, but then I remembered no males use the urinals, at least not the student males. Wearing lingerie, I had to use the stalls anyway, but I didn't mind. It took me a while to adjust to wearing high heels, whether stacked or not, and I found myself walking like Jade, swaying my hips. But I was dressed like a girl anyway and stood only 5 feet 8 inches even with the added height. So what if I looked a little feminine? Most of the guys at school did too. When we stopped to eat, the waiter asked, "What will it be, ladies?" That set the tone, and we all had a good laugh at his expense or mine. My new attire and appearance, complete with earrings, didn't go unnoticed by Mrs. Collins, my classmates, or the other instructors. I could see them noticing the changes, but no one said a word, except for Mrs. Collins. "You're not wearing your earplugs, dear, and you've been eating in the student cafeteria for quite a while now, haven't you?" "Yes, that's true. Is there anything wrong?" "Oh, no. But you were warned. We just want you to be happy here. It's not a problem for us." That was a relief. After that conversation,
I occasionally wore my stacked heels to class without any comments except from my friends, who said I looked very cute. Jade had given me a couple of pairs of beautiful earrings to wear, and my hair had grown almost to my shoulders by now. I was taking better care of it and had switched to her brand of hair products, which gave me more volume and shine. However, I did need a trim. They were eager to get me into the campus styling salon, and just before Christmas break, I finally gave in. I left the salon with a soft body perm and a trim that made me look even more feminine, with what I'd call a wavy pageboy style and bangs. And that wasn't all, my blouses now had bumps, just like Adrian's, if not more so. I was also now sleeping in soft, sensual nylon nighties, one of 3 that I couldn't resist buying on our last trip to the lingerie store. I had completely fallen in love with sexy women's lingerie and wanted to wear it all the time. I couldn't keep my hands off it. If Jade didn't mind a bit of femininity in her men, I figured she was happy with me. But I was becoming so soft and rounded. It wasn't just that I had developed a fondness for nylon and lace. My hips and chest were growing round and soft, and I was becoming more like Adrian, very girlish, by my own admission, and I think it was becoming increasingly obvious. I was beginning to sway a bit too. Not too much, not in a campy way like some of the gay boys, but noticeably. The faculty had nothing but compliments to offer, though. I overheard a snippet of a conversation that I was certain was about me. Well, she was warned, but doesn't she look sweet now? And look at how she carries herself and uses her hand. She. Me. Were they really referring to me with that feminine pronoun? They were definitely looking at me. I had been home every weekend, and my parents had noticed the gradual shifts in my clothing, demeanor, style, and mannerisms over the past few months, just a little over 3, actually. Mom handled the laundry, so she saw my nails, hair, earrings, arched eyebrows, darkened lashes, and the carefully applied subtle eyeliner. She noticed the shine on my lips and my softening body. She knew my wardrobe consisted entirely of girls' clothes and lingerie. I had lost weight in my shoulders, waist, and muscle mass, redistributing it to my hips and chest. My complexion was perfect, but I couldn't help but jiggle when I walked. Honey, is there something you want to tell your mother? You've put on some weight, haven't you? Gee, Mom. I don't think so. Why? Oh, please, Erin. We're not blind. Or is it Erica now? That did it. I looked at her, and without much warning, the dam broke. She held me close, and I cried. We both wept, my mascara running down my face. Oh, Mom. I think I'm turning into a girl. What am I going to do? The worst part is, I love what's happening to me. Do you really, dear? Yes, with all my heart. Then be whoever you need to be, but be happy. That's all we want for you in the end. Your dad is a bit taken aback, but I'll help him understand. Is your job going well? Just fine, Mom. They don't seem to mind at all. Well then, just be happy and let things unfold as they may. I really think you should get yourself a few nice bras, though. You are developing. Mom took me bra shopping, and let me tell you, that was a revelation. I could already imagine the headlines in the school newspaper. Erin buys first bras. When I returned to school after vacation, I had a surprise waiting for me. The school psychiatrist wanted to see me. So, Mr. Walker, how are things going for you, and how do you like your job now? I could tell he was trying to make me comfortable, but it wasn't working. Things seem to be going great, doctor, unless you have something to tell me. I decided to toss that out there and see how he responded. Well, Erin, may I call you Erin? Of course. We've noticed some changes since you started. You've stopped wearing your protective earplugs and have been eating in the student cafeteria for 3 months now. Well, I'm the same age as the students, and it's a bit more comfortable for me. I see. As I mentioned, there have been some changes, and we appreciate your work and want you to stay, so it's time we had a conversation about your future. I thought that would come from the personnel administrator. Not in a case like yours. You see, Chatham is a special school. We cater to a unique type of student, often one who has experienced significant trouble. I don't understand. They all seem well behaved. Yes, well, that's because they're subjected to constant subliminal conditioning and various chemical reinforcements to transform them into acceptable members of society. You mean this isn't just an ordinary prep school? Far from it, I'm afraid. Although we don't advertise, you have inadvertently become part of the student bodies program. It's perfectly natural in your quest for companionship with peers your own age, and we have no issue with it as long as you don't. In fact, we believe you may be ready to progress to the next level since you seem quite comfortable now as a feminine person. I have become terribly effeminate, haven't I? Yes, dear, but that was to be expected. You have moved beyond effeminate into truly feminine. You didn't follow the rules, and now you are happily paying the price. I am happy, Doctor, although I don't fully understand it. But the price? You are becoming a girl, of course. Doesn't your own mind tell you that's what you want? Oh yes, Doctor, but why do I crave pretty clothes? Why do I want to wear dresses, sexy high heels, and makeup, and look like Jade? What has happened to me, and why am I growing breasts and this great-looking bottom that sways when I walk? Why are my thighs filling out? Why am I talking like a girl and thinking about men? One thing at a time, Irina. We might as well start calling you that now. You chose to subject yourself to our reprogramming, which has been playing through the speakers 24/7. That made you more susceptible and accepting of femininity in boys. Then you started eating with the students and began receiving large doses of female hormones along with other conditioners in your meals, just like they do. And here we are. The chemicals are reshaping your body into that of a young woman, and your mind desires every bit of it due to the programming and the hormones. You can't help it, and even I can't change your mind now. The programming is irreversible, and we know you don't care anymore anyway. You want to be Erica, don't you? Yes, Doctor, I do. Oh, what have I done? At that moment, my perfectly manicured hands flew up to my head, adorned with shiny blonde highlighted hair, while my long, slender nails glimmered. Now, don't worry, dear. What about your parents? They've seen the changes and just want me to be happy. Wonderful. And happy you will be as a beautiful young woman. You're here today to begin your transition. You'll receive a time-release shot every week through June, and I'll provide counseling as needed. I believe you'll make a lovely addition to our staff, Irina, and if you decide to pursue college, we may be able to help you, provided you sign a contract to return here to teach. You no longer have feelings for Jade, do you? Heavens no. Good, because she's a boy too, at least for now. Really? A boy? Absolutely. Now, you'll also need some electrolysis, and we're set up for that. I'll schedule your first appointment. With your parents' permission, we can remove your unnecessary hormone factories. Please take this form home and have it signed so we can proceed with that. Most males would want them replaced with prostheses, but you will benefit from the empty sack. I'd recommend letting Jade and Adriana take you shopping for skirts, dresses, bras, and pumps, young lady. You know you want to. Oh, Doctor, I want to so badly. Thank you. I took the form and left, elated that everything was finally clear and excited to know I was truly going to become a woman, whether by accident or fate. He had called me a beautiful young woman. And so, the pretense of Erin was dropped. Jade admitted her true identity at my urging. She was a juvenile delinquent with 3 strikes against her, but she seemed perfectly happy now to embrace her identity as a girl with a sweet disposition. She showed me a picture of herself before coming to Chatham, and they looked like 2 entirely different people. As suggested, we went out and spent some of my money on girlish essentials. I instinctively knew how to walk, talk, and act like a girl. No article of clothing was a mystery to me. It was all part of the programming and training Jade and Adrian had provided. I swished beautifully, and suddenly, Irina became the new assistant, complete with heels and a dress, along with appropriate makeup. When I showed up for class dressed like that, Mrs. Collins remarked, "Irina, You look simply lovely. Doesn't she, class? Yes, Mrs. Collins, came the chorus. It's hard to keep a secret when the whole school is focused on making changes. It's funny they never mentioned the true nature of the place, just to wear my earplugs and eat with the faculty. That still bothers me a little, but I'm quite happy with the results. I continued to develop where I should and reveled in my femininity. My parents signed that form, albeit with my father somewhat reluctantly, and I underwent a minor procedure under local anesthesia that made my panties fit much better. The unsightly bulge was gone, along with my ability to produce tadpoles. My hair now cascaded down to my shoulder blades, and I had grown to 5 feet 5.5 inches while working toward a B+ cup. Over the next few months, I watched as the first-year boys transformed into first-year girls, often without complaint. A few resisted, but they found themselves evolving into increasingly feminine versions of themselves. Adriana and I grew even closer as she started wearing skirts, bras, and full makeup too. By June, there were no obvious boys left in any of my classes, and to all intents and purposes, my parents now had a daughter. All my unwanted body hair was gone, and I was looking forward to some quality bikini time at the county pool. With the removal and rearrangement of things set to be completed in the fall, and my new female urges, I was ready to break a few hearts. Oh yes, I had become attracted to hunks too, and I was unashamed of it. As it turned out, Jade, no longer the object of my affections, lived in one of the nicer neighborhoods just about 15 minutes from my home. I suppose money doesn't prevent trouble. She had graduated just above the middle of her class but decided against going to college after prep school. Instead, she planned to use her computer skills to find a job after taking some time off. We exchanged addresses and phone numbers, and after we finished up the paperwork at school, I called her. I wanted to visit her house, meet her parents, and see how they felt about having a daughter instead of a delinquent son. Mrs. Williams was very nice and treated us both like refined young women, which I suppose we were, by hook or by crook. Jade was quite domestic at home, and they had their own swimming pool, a nice, large one in the backyard. My swimsuit was in my car, and after Jade finished the lunch dishes, we changed and went outside to soak up some sun. She had a striking figure, which made me wonder what had happened to it. Oh, they didn't explain it to you? Explain what? That was part of my sentence. While you were finishing the paperwork for the term, I was in the hospital. I really am a girl now, completely and forever. You see, his last crime was the last straw for the judge. Since I was a minor, they couldn't give me the usual sentence and offered me Chatham as an alternative. Of course, they didn't really explain the full details. But I really love being a girl, Irina. It's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. You will too. You don't have a choice, you know. Yes, I've been told that, but who's going to pay for my operation? My parents definitely can't afford it. Didn't I hear they offered you a deal if you came back to teach? Yes. Well, there you go. You teach, they pay. You land a good job, and everyone benefits. Plus, you and I can find ourselves a couple of great guys to take care of us for the rest of our lives. Doesn't that sound like fun? Jade, you little devil, you've thought this through to the last detail. If I didn't know any better, I'd think that last thing he did was intentional, knowing what would happen to you. Laughing, yeah, maybe I did, but you'll never know for sure. Now you're caught in the web too. Here you are, stuck in satin and lace, surrounded by femininity, radiating appeal in that bikini, advertising with every tap of your heels on the pavement. I bet you can't wait to get back to school and see the new crop of soon-to-be girls and finish out your year living as a woman. She had me there. Even without the constant barrage of subliminal programming, which was no longer necessary since I was fully cooked after 2 semesters, I would continue to take my hormones willingly, my mindset drifting further away from manhood and any thoughts of going back. Just then, a shadow fell across my face. While I couldn't see who it was, I could tell it was a hunk, about 6 feet tall and 185 pounds. Oh, hi James. This is Irina, the new student assistant at Chatham. She doesn't live too far from here. Sit down so she can see you. James lives next door to Irina. We let him use the pool in exchange for taking care of it. He's a sophomore at Waltham College. James took my hand and, lifting it, kissed it. Would you like to take a swim, Irina? You're lovely. Yes, James. I think I would. Thank you. He held my hand and effortlessly lifted my 120 pounds. I was right. He was 6 inches taller than me and nicely built, with a rugged face and a charming smile. Oh my. My hormones were in overdrive. I had no idea I would react this way to a real man. Butterflies fluttered in my stomach. I needed to talk to Mom right away. I hoped he liked what he saw and wondered if he had any idea I wasn't completely real yet. Surely he knew all about Jade. We dove in together and swam to the other end.